why we picked a mirror for our first slide. Can you guess why? What is the connection between a writing webinar and a mirror? If you have a guess, please use your mic or put your answer in the chat box. Let's see. We don't have an answer. I thought somebody sent an answer to the question.
It's too deep a question for a Monday afternoon, I think.
All righty. Okay. So I'm not going to tire you because this is something it came to me while getting ready for this presentation. I thought that, a piece of writing can show teachers many things, including what our students know, what they don't know, what level of their grammar is, vocab is, how concentrated they are when they are, writing that piece of English. So it's a reflection tool for me. I see the writing as, students, how much they've learned, okay, over time. That's why we picked a mirror. Somebody says writing gives a teacher a hard copy of students' progress. So this was basically our reason. For level, we did the job distribution, Jen and I'm going to be talking about what we can do as teachers to help our learners to produce writing. At this level, yes, they are supposed to write an academic paragraph, but some of us from experience know that and say that maybe some exercises on a sentence level might, help them more. So I will suggest some two activities for this one. So this one, sorry. I think I have to stop share to move the slide. I'm sorry. Yeah, here we go. Sorry. I think it will move this time. Yeah, this exercise, as you can see from the screen, is asking students to identify what the subject of the sentence is, what the verb of the sentence is, okay? And this particular PowerPoint actually has been shared by Nilay. So she compiled very useful PowerPoint slides for students to practice sentences, not writing actually, to identify certain parts of a sentence. From experience, again, we are aware that our students, they are not so, let's say, knowledgeable about their own grammar. Turkish grammar can even be something foreign to these students. So I thought maybe with Nilay's permission, of course, everybody can work on exercises on sentence level to give students the ground to scaffold their paragraphs. With Nilay's permission, I'm announcing this. She has this beautiful PowerPoint slide. I mean, there is more to that, but I don't want to take much of your time. So students in this exercise identify certain parts of the sentence and functions of certain bits like subject and the verb. Another exercise that we can, in fact, try in the classroom is something very simple. You see two columns. You can have, cut-ups in the classroom. We have the luxury to do that now. And students can pick a piece of paper from each pile, a subject from one pile and the verb from another pile, okay? What we want them to do is to construct the shortest sentence, of course, okay? So this has to be done with the same subject and words. You can, use your own version if you wish. What I did in the classroom was asking them to form a sentence, shortest sentence possible, and make it true for themselves if possible as well. And this was followed by some questions like where. So to add information to this sentence, they needed to answer questions like where, when. So Emre runs around the park every evening. Why does Emre run? To keep fit. And what happens when he does? As you can see, each question, in fact, helps students to add one bit to the sentence. So this, I think, would give them the, the practice of constructing more complex sentences which are true for themselves. If you like the idea, please send me a thumbs up. You don't have to if you like it. Okay, so this can be, I think, applicable at any level, starting from A level to higher levels. You might like to try this in your writing lessons, or integrated skills teachers can also make use of this exercise. We usually, when it comes to paragraph writing, I think it's a good idea to show students a sample. And most of the time, I've done it myself too. I would, start a lesson after the second week, especially in the third week, showing them a sample, asking them to analyze the paragraph, and also hope that they would produce something similar. Later, because of some deficiencies in their grammar and vocabulary, I realized that students, in fact, wasn't really that successful to make use of the sample. So instead, maybe I thought we could, some students might think, what we are showing is composed of this, there are so many X's and Y's and Z's and question marks for the students. You might like to start with a very simple example, right? Like this. So X's represent the title. Here's our title, something that everyone can talk about or write about, right? And Y's represent the topic sentence. A simple one, as an example, can be shared with the students. Z's represent the supporting details, and an example can be shared with the students as well. And a concluding sentence. What I'm trying to say here is that, yes, they will be writing much more than that, but maybe starting with a simple one like this would make the life of the students much easier. Then we can work on, the following supporting details and examples. This is just an idea. I hope you like it. So this was my part before Jan takes over. Jan, I will stop sharing. Please continue with your.
Okay, thank you, Funda. So I'm going to talk about things you can do with students when they are ready to start working with sample paragraphs and sample essays, and then things you can do to help them start building their own paragraphs. So we're going to focus on how students learn how to write a paragraph. So like I said, we'll look at some analysis of and practice with samples, then scaffolding, and then we'll talk about a few other things, and we'll kick it back to Funda eventually. I want to let you know that this part of the presentation was adapted from one of the supplementary PowerPoints that CMDU provided. And I did adapt it for the online context 2 years ago almost, but I think it can be used in a face-to-face lesson as well. So it's really just kind of taking students through a sample paragraph and asking them some very specific and very leading questions. So for example, you could start with, asking them to identify the topic sentence, right? And then using a lot of color coding and marking, you can help them to identify that. And then what are the 3 supporting ideas, or in this case, the reasons for, this is a reason paragraph. So, elicit from the students the answers to these questions, right? What comes next? Okay, so what comes next is reason number 1. It's not enough though to just list the reason. Each reason needs a little bit of supporting explanation or examples. So you can ask your students a question like this, right? How many explanation and example sentences are there? And give them a chance to answer. And of course, you can highlight those as well. So again, this is kind of going step by step through the different parts of the paragraph. I'm not going to go through all of them, all 3 reasons, but you get the idea, I hope. So then eventually, your paragraph might look kind of like this, all marked up. And one thing I've been thinking about as well is that I do like to give my students paper to mark things up on. I know some people say, well, they're just going to throw it away. But I think as a visual learner myself, I like to have that in front of me. So for example, when we're doing reading comprehension practice, I want my students to practice this idea of marking things up. So I do think it would be helpful to give that to them. But again, your students better than we do, so you can make that decision for your own lessons. I think it's also important, though, to help them understand transitions and cohesion. So we can ask a question like this. What words or phrases are used to introduce a new reason? And again, have students find that information, and you can highlight it as they find it. It also is helpful to talk about these other types of transitions for introducing examples and explanations. So again, have them find the phrases and words that are used, and then highlight them and point out any that the students miss. So hopefully they're starting to understand how the types of ideas that are needed in a paragraph and how those ideas fit together, and words and phrases that they can use to make their paragraph more cohesive. So we've analyzed a sample essay, but we can also practice with a sample essay to, again, just really drill in and help students understand these ideas and the connections between ideas in a paragraph. So these are the 4 things that I'm going to show you examples of: jumbled sentences, insertion, irrelevant sentences, and gap filling. This is not the order you should teach them in. And in fact, jumbled sentences might be the last thing that you do, but I just want to give you some examples of activities. So for this one, just have a sample paragraph, jumble up the sentences, cut them up. And this is really helpful for kinesthetic learners, because they can then rearrange things if it doesn't work the first time. This is kind of a long paragraph, so you might want to start with a shorter paragraph. But hopefully they'll get the idea that, what was it? The first one needs to come before secondly, but then there also needs to be some example sentences in between. This one, again, they're trying to identify, or it helps them understand where things go in a paragraph, right? So before your second reason, you need something to support your first reason. For this one, I know students sometimes have sentences that don't really make sense for the paragraph. So it's important to help them be able to identify sentences that don't belong in a paragraph. So, we could cross out the irrelevant sentences. And then, of course, putting those transition words and phrases back into a paragraph where they've been removed. So again, helping students understand the importance of transitions, the order of transitions, and how they help the ideas hang together in a paragraph. Sorry, I might have been saying essay before. I'm used to teaching level C and D, but of course we're focusing on paragraph writing for level B. So it's also important when students start writing their own paragraphs that you are able to support them and scaffold and kind of show them how to start putting things together. So what I have here is an example from the assessment task. So for the assessment, the topic sentence and the concluding sentence are given, and the supporting ideas are also given. It's important that your students know that they will need to use the ideas from the topic sentence to construct their paragraph for the assessment, right? It's a little more structured for this task, but they do still need to come up with the supporting details to explain the ideas that are given. So I think it's worthwhile taking some time with your students to brainstorm and help them understand how to come up with those ideas for when they're writing a paragraph when the ideas are given. So for example, how is public transport safer than other options? What does it mean to say that it's clean? And in what ways is it cheaper than other options? So have them work together, brainstorm some ideas, and hopefully they'll come up with some good supporting details and examples that they can include in a paragraph. So we've got our key ideas and our supporting details. Now, how do we turn it into a paragraph? So here is the topic sentence and the concluding sentence that were given, and our three key ideas that were also given. But now we need to add some signal phrases, right? So again, these are examples, but you can help students kind of walk them through this. And maybe they have different signal phrases they want to use, and that's fine. So now that we've got our signal phrases, what else do we need to add? Supporting details, right? And that's what we just brainstormed together. So we've got our supporting details that we can add in. And if you wanted to, you could even take out the transition phrases from these and have students put those back in as part of this scaffolding and kind of building up exercise. So I think I've been using mostly reason paragraphs, but you can do this with different styles of paragraphs that they have to write. And built into the curriculum is a lot of time to practice these regular opportunities for writing different types of paragraphs. And if you think your students need it, you can go through these same steps with the different types of paragraphs that they'll have to write in level B. So I'm going to send it back to Funda to talk about constructive and formative feedback.
Yep, I'll do that again. So here we are looking at a piece of writing from a B-level student. Can everybody see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So here is a descriptive paragraph. I'm sure most of you assigned this homework before this week. So can you take a minute and read the paragraph and see, try to tell me what the major problems are. Oops. Okay. You can use your mic if you think it is gonna be quicker. if it is convenient. What are the major problems?
Can I speak?
Of course, of course.
The supporting details, when the student starts the supporting detail, there we don't see the necessary sentences. He just starts giving examples. The supporting details must be written first, the detail itself, and then the examples should come secondly. So this is
Thank you very much for this.
Yes. And then a lot of punctuation and spelling problems. For example, lots of tourists come to visit this place. Capitalization problem.
Yeah.
And grammar problems. Okay.
So there are all kinds of problems, and I think because of this, it is sometimes very hard to give the most decent feedback. So you don't know where to start. You know, the grammar mistakes are obvious, and most of the time, I mean, we find it very, easy to, give feedback on that because it doesn't take much time. But my question is, what do the students do with that correction or feedback? So most of the time, I don't know if you feel this way, but we spend ages, giving feedback, written feedback, oral feedback, doing the correction, using the correction code. Most of the time, I feel that, students should be more proactive and they should do something with that feedback. Here is a suggestion. Thank you very much for your answer, by the way, Phyllis.
You're welcome.
Those were the points anyway. And here's a suggestion. I think it is worth a try. Let's see. Let's move. I'll do that again. Sorry. Yes, here's a suggestion, and it is called error log. Maybe some of you have tried this before. And when Jen shared this idea with me, I thought that I might like to give this a try. And I thought that's why I'm sharing this with you. So here is what we can do. We can ask students to draw a chart like this, or get a printout, on a piece of paper, or even use their notebook to record their errors and mistakes. So for every time we assign them to write something, in fact, they can refer back to this list. So the list isn't that complicated. So for grammar mistakes, I think grammar, punctuation, spelling mistakes, it might be a good idea to, keep the reminder next to you, talking about students and referring to that log every time students write something. In the first column, you can see the original sentence with the error. Next to it, they can write the corrected sentence. And most of the time, this comes from the teachers anyway. And we can maybe ask them to produce a similar sentence, paying attention not to make the same mistakes. So thanks to this, maybe not all students, I'm sure not everybody would buy the idea, but some students might like to try this. If you think it's a good idea, we can always, provide you with a copy of the slides, actually, or an error log. My other point is about, as you can remember, is about the coherence problems, organization problems that this paper has, and what can we do about it? So what I did was to analyze the paragraph and put an example, okay, of how we can in fact correct it. You might be saying to yourself that I can't do this for each paragraph. I can't do this for each essay. It is time consuming. I understand it. But if there are students in your class, some students in your class who understand the language, but they can't organize the ideas or give the examples right away instead of mentioning the key ideas. So these are organizational problems. And I think maybe saving some time in the classroom and doing whole class feedback might be a good idea. Because if you give, feedback to one student and the others will expect the same thing. But if there are issues related to organizing ideas, how to make it more coherent, then maybe some of your class hour can be spent on that. As Phyllis said earlier, examples come very, very early there, and it is so abrupt. And here you will see the sentences in green. These are my corrections, my suggestions, let's say. So maybe giving one-to-one feedback might be a good idea to sort the problem out, or saving some of your classroom time and do whole class feedback about organizational mistakes and coherence mistakes might be a good idea. So here are all the sentences and my suggestions. And the blue one wasn't there, I added myself. Of course, you can't do this for each and every paragraph, but maybe one example which has serious organizational problems might be something good to try. Okay, so this was, I think, all I was going to say about feedback. Jen, if you want to share the rest of the presentation, you can do it now.
Great, thank you, Funda. Perfect. All right, so I wanted to go over just briefly what our students are going to be asked to do on the assessment and the gateway. We're not teaching to the test, but it is important for students to understand what will be expected of them and to prepare them for the test, to take some time to do that. And it's important for you guys to understand that as well. So for the assessment task, there are three possible paragraph types: descriptive, opinion, one-sided opinion, and reason. Just be aware that descriptive might be a comparison of how something has changed, like how your hometown has changed, for example. The topic sentence, ideas for supporting sentence, and the concluding sentence are all given to the students as part of the assessment task. And as I mentioned before, it's important that students pay close attention to the topic and the concluding sentence that are given, because they will need to use the ideas that are listed in the topic sentence for the assessment task. Again, the main point of the task is for the students to write the supporting sentences. They have to write at least 100 words, and they have 40 minutes to do that. Here is a sample assessment task. So it's important that students know their supporting ideas will need to come in the order of shops, entertainment, and transportation. For the gateway task, we have the same 3 paragraph types, but the students are not given the topic or the concluding sentences. They are given ideas for supporting sentences, but if they have other ideas they would prefer to use, they can do that in the gateway. For this task, the students will need to write the full paragraph. So the length is a little bit longer. It's 130 words. And again, they'll have 40 minutes to do that. Here is a sample gateway task for a reason paragraph. So again, if the students want to use these supporting ideas, they can, or they can come up with their own. And here's a sample of an opinion paragraph for the gateway. All right. I think it's also important for you as writing teachers to be aware of what we're looking for in our students' writing and how it's going to be measured. So this is the rubric that we use for the assessment task. I think it's good to share this with your students and help them understand it. But I also think it's really important when you're giving feedback to think about your feedback in terms of the items that we're looking for, especially as Funda was talking about with content and organization and structure. You know, it is easy for us as teachers to focus on the grammar mistakes because those are a lot easier to address, but a lot of students have trouble with organization and structure. So it is important to work on those with your students. Just to let you know, the grading criteria for the assessment task and the gateway task are exactly the same, except for the minimum word count that's at the bottom. Like I said, 100 for the assessment and 130 for the gateway. So I think that is all. Beatrice, you've got your camera on.
Yes, I'm here.
Did you want to add anything about that?
Yes, actually, just to comment. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, for the webinar. I really appreciate it. And thank you to all the instructors who have joined the session. I think it's very important that we have a few IS instructors, I believe, if I'm not wrong. I was just in the previous one. Anyways, it's very important to attend these sessions, whether they relate to you or not at that current moment, just so that you know what is going on. Regarding the criteria and the writing handbook still exists, but we had to pull it apart during the pandemic so that it was easier for instructors to share with the students, and it was easy for instructors to follow, as we were all stuck at home and most of us did not have access to a printer or anything. So our writing handbook still does exist. We should please refer to the writing handbook and to the criteria while we're grading, while we're teaching. We should share it with our students. It is okay to share with our students and to go over it with them. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Beatrice. Do you
Thank
guys
you,
have
Beatrice.
questions? We do have a few minutes for questions if you have questions.
I think everything was clear. People don't have any questions, but we would like to thank everyone for being with us. And I hope this was useful. And if you think that we should share the slides with you, please let us know. We would happily do that. Have a great day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.